everyone. So glad you're here. Thank you for being here. I know we're going to have some more folks trickling in, so we'll just hopefully filter them in wherever they can. I'm Margaret Mueller. I'm president and CEO of the Executives Club of Chicago. Thanks for being here. AI has obviously become part of our everyday lives. While many of us understand the basics, there's still a lot to learn. So luckily, we have this outstanding panel of experts ready to share their insights on how embracing AI responsibly and thoughtfully will help our organizations harness its power and adapt to the evolving landscape of work and talent. So before we begin, I'd like to thank all the organizations and the individuals who support Exec Club and our mission to be the nexus of the Chicagoland business community. So first, I'd like to welcome and thank the members of our board of directors and council of advisors who are in attendance. We have a couple of them. I'll just acknowledge them. We have Mary Cook, Managing Director, Midwest Corn Ferry; Evelyn De La Cruz, Head of America's Administrative Operations, Spencer Stewart. And I think those are the only two. Have I missed anyone? And Beth Hayden. Where is Beth? And Beth Hayden, Chief People Officer, Spot Hero. Just walked. Your name was crossed off because you weren't here, but you're here. Welcome. Thank you all for your commitment to our mission. I also would like to extend a sincere thank you to today's presenting sponsor, UL Solutions, and our featured sponsor, Barilla. I also want to thank all of our seasoned sponsors, all of these companies that you see. It's tremendous. These are all the companies that come out and support all of the work that Executives Club does. And finally, thank you to all of our members here tonight. We have a huge member turnout. We know we do open a number of our events up to the public, and we usually have a mix, but we have a lot of members in the room today. You are the heart of our organization. We're so glad that you're here. If you're not yet a member and you're interested in learning more, find anyone with a member badge, and our staff are out there, and they'd be happy to talk with you. So now I am pleased to welcome up Kristen Story from UL Solutions, who's going to introduce this evening's panel.
Hello, everyone. So yes, good afternoon. I'm Kristen Story. I'm Vice President of Global People Services for UL Solutions. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all here today. Thank you for joining us as part of, I know we did have a huge turnout for this. AI is everywhere. So thanks for joining us for AI and the Future of Talent. Alongside Barilla, UL Solutions is thrilled to sponsor the program. And that's what these events are all about. It's really bringing people together to have conversations around topics that are top of mind. So AI, I mean, this has got to be shoo-in word of the year, phrase of the year. Seemingly everywhere we look, everything we tune into, AI is being spoken about, often with promises of how it's going to revolutionize how we live, work, and play. Yet we've also seen how these technological advances, developed with the most positive of intent, can have unintended effects. And then as talent practitioners, we've spent years working against things like unconscious bias and asking every vendor, are you sure this is GDPR compliant for our data? And so in our roles, we're expected to find that balance between innovation and managing risk. So it's no surprise that many of us are here today really battling questions around how, when, where do we use AI? At UL Solutions, we're no stranger to tackling challenges. We're a global leader in safety science, and you've probably seen that UL mark on products all around your home and office. Computers, phone, your washing machine, holiday lights, you name it. And if you haven't noticed that UL in a circle, I can pretty much guarantee you'll see it everywhere now. But that's what we do. We work with the world's leading brands to test, inspect, and certify that their products are safe according to safety and other standards. And through our suite of software and advisory services, we help companies navigate the ever-changing landscape around regulatory, supply chain, sustainability challenges. And we're a mission-driven organization with our 15,000 employees worldwide that are dedicated to working for a safer world. In fact, we're actually celebrating 130 years this year, and we got our start here in Chicago. And the event where we started was when Chicago hosted the World's Fair back in 1894. And it was the first electric World's Fair. So electricity was kind of the new invention at the time. And our founder was there to assess the risks around fire and this new technology before technology was even a word. Since then, we've been working alongside cutting edge developments in technology. So that's decades of testing and certifying, that the most innovative advancements meet safety and security standards. This is much like where we are with AI in HR. I'm guessing I speak for all of us since we've made the time to be here today, that the desire and the want to use it or to use it more is there, but is it safe? How can we leverage its power while avoiding those unintended pitfalls? So we're all on this journey together, and I'm looking forward to hearing from our panel and sharing more today so that we can all leave a bit more aware and informed as we navigate the role that AI can and certainly will play in the future of talent. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to today's panel. Joining us are Carla Grossenbacher, labor and employment lawyer at Seyfarth Shaw, LLP, Gerald Schaefer, Director of Human Capital Advisory at KPMG, and Caroline Werner, Chief People Officer at LogicGate. And then our moderator for today is going to be Laura Burke, Head of Human Resources at Barilla. One important point to note, and I know they had it on the screens, if you have questions, you can do that through your phone. You can text exec to the number 22333. Okay. Now to kick things off, I'm really proud to introduce my colleague, Dr. Robert Sloan, Chief Scientist at UL Solutions. He's going to officially open the program with a keynote address on the future of AI. So without further ado, I'll have Rob kick things off.
Thanks, Kristen. Thanks for the opportunity to spend a little time with you this afternoon. So I'm Rob Sloan, Chief Scientist at UL Solutions. I'm based in New York, but we're headquartered here in Chicago with, as Kristen mentioned, a long history here. This afternoon I have a few specific goals. And no, the Chief Scientist is not going to get into the program of neural networks. We're not going to talk about algorithms and bias. Yeah, we do that. But this afternoon I want to keep it fairly light and engaging, number one. Secondly, informative. I want to take you on a little bit of a tour of the last couple of years that we've experienced and seen headlines about and what's behind some of those headlines. And then lastly, I want to provide range for this panel. And that, as you will see, is not going to be a problem. There are a wide range of opinions on what AI will mean. And yes, we will name a couple names along the way, and that's okay. So it's going to get rough a little bit, but don't worry, there's hope for humanity. Even in a 10-minute keynote, we will take that journey together. So next slide, please, which I guess I can see. So if we can move to the next slide. All right. So I want to take you through some of the generative AI news. So to give you a little level setting, there are two basic categories of AI. Traditional machine learning, focused on algorithms and mathematical insights. Generative AI is what has been making most of the headlines. That is the focus for me for this keynote. I want to summarize this in two quotes, both from last month. The first quote is, "You are about to enter the greatest golden age of human possibility." I think we should probably just stop there and go to the bar. That's Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI. We'll talk a fair bit about him along the way too, but Sam has a pretty positive view of where we are as of May 2024. The second quote is, "In a benign scenario, probably none of us will have a job. The question will really be one of, does your life have meaning?" Any guesses? Elon Musk, CEO of X, Twitter, also now XAI, which has $6 billion worth of funding, if you didn't see that a week or two ago. So that's Elon. And you don't want to know about the dark scenario. That's the benign scenario, just to be clear. So range, right? So the panel is fully empowered, I think, at this point across those two quotes alone. But I think it helps highlight vast differences from people who ought to know in terms of what are we actually going to experience as humans over the next several years. They don't know, but we're starting to get some hints into how we can manage in terms of human capital and talent and development. So how did we get here? Let's recap the last 2 years in a couple of slides. We can go to the next slide. All right, so November 30th, 2022, ChatGPT launches. The public gets to learn about what large language models are. Yay. You get to put all sorts of things in and interesting results come back. It's great. We're not going to have to worry about deep thought anymore. The computer will do it for us. Everything is golden and wonderful, and we can just relax on the beach and not have a worry. Of course, it's never that simple, right? So let's go forward a few months to the next slide. There are some concerns that emerge. There were examples of reporters who were being argued into divorcing their wives. There were even darker examples where people were being asked to question their lives by AI systems. There are bias examples. The pace of regulatory advancement has lagged the pace of AI advancement. So what happened on March 22nd, 2023, is there was a petition that was circulated for a 6-month pause. And our friend Elon Musk asked for that petition and asked for your signature on that. Lo and behold, it turned out Twitter was about 6 months behind on developing a large language model. Shocking, I know. Really, really shocking that was the case. There was no pause. You know the answer to what happened after that petition went out. So advancement continued, GPT-4, now we're on to GPT-4o. So let's push forward another couple of months to the next slide. Okay, so we've arrived at the low point. May 30th, 2023, that is not the release date for Oppenheimer. Okay, that was actually a month or two later. This was the release date, though, for a one-sentence statement from the Center for AI Safety that said, and I quote, "Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks such as pandemics and nuclear war." So pretty serious list of signatories to this, actually. Geoffrey Hinton, who I promised I wouldn't go into neural networks, but what you should know about him is he invented quite a lot of the technology behind large language models. So these are some pretty serious players with insights signing this petition. Sam Altman, now the mushroom cloud is golden, but I don't think that's the golden age he was referring to. He did sign this in terms of the level of concern. So serious concerns from some serious players being voiced at this point in the May timeframe. So that's the low point. Would you like to feel a little better than that? Yes. Okay, perfect. Let's go forward one slide. We're going to go ever so slightly back in time to 1770 or so, when, of all things, pencil erasers were being invented and commercialized. And what does that have to do with this? We've been here before, in a way. Believe it or not, there was a deep concern at that time that when you did not write your thoughts in indelible ink, you would not take your thoughts seriously, and human thought would suffer massively because of this invention that you see here. That didn't quite happen. So to borrow a quote from Frank Lloyd Wright, whose Oak Park eraser shaving filled office helped drive architectural innovation from Chicago, he said, you got a choice. You can either use an eraser on a drafting table, or you can use a sledgehammer on a construction site. So we evolved. We shifted how we use different available tools, even something as basic as an eraser. We created bigger and bolder, and yes, more erasable ideas along the way. But now let's see how we can do in this room versus AI. I want to put a couple little quizzes out there. So no free lunch, sorry, no free bar either. Next slide. All right, so I went to school in Kentucky, Lincoln's birthplace, but I never heard about his guitar chops, okay? I did not hear about Lincoln's guitar chops. There's a reason for that. Kristen referenced one of them. Here in Chicago in 1893, electricity was introduced to the public, much like the ChatGPT moment, right? Brand new, innovation, 1893. Furthermore, Leo Fender introduced the Stratocaster in about 1950, so clearly this is an AI creation. Great photo. Really wish that was real. Totally fake, right? So that's an easy one. That's easy to pick up on. They're not always so easy, and AI will get better. Let's look at this a different way. Let's go human versus AI. All right, so next slide. This is an image, a picture I took earlier this year during a break at a sustainability conference in Germany. So what do you clever humans see here? You see Gouda, goat, mild, matured. What is this? Cheese. Hey, would you like to know what AI saw? So I actually took an AI course earlier this year at MIT, and we had, I won't name names on this case, we had an image analyzer that was state-of-the-art from a company, and I put this image in. AI saw hockey pucks, rolls of tape, a bocce ball, did not see cheese. And actually, that's not uncommon to have those kinds of failings along the way. It will continue to improve, but we're not at a point yet where there's no use for us and we're not going to have any jobs. Good thing, right? Another very famous and familiar brand name launched an AI-enabled search engine within the past 2 weeks, and some of the headlines included, the search engine would recommend that you put glue on your pizza. It recommends that you eat a small rock a day for health. And it also informs us that Andrew Johnson received college degrees between 1947 and 2012, which is amazing because he died in 1875. And there's something there. I think AI doesn't want dead presidents to stay dead. So something's going on with that one. But clearly and you can pick up on things contextually and otherwise that you don't just turn thinking over to an AI agent or an AI engine or system. And so it's not so much human versus AI, it's human plus AI that we now need to take a look at. So we can go to the next slide, please. So chess has long been, along with Go and some other games, been considered a measure of human thought and how capable is one human versus another. They ranked humans, they still do. With the ELO system, Garry Kasparov was one of the highest ranked players ever. And in 1997, IBM came to Garry and they said, look, we have a machine learning system called Deep Blue. Actually in 96, they first came to him and said, hey Garry, we'd like for you to go up against Deep Blue. What do you think? And he said, sure, I'll do that. And he beat Deep Blue 4-2. IBM went back, did a little work on Deep Blue, came back in 97 and said, hey, Garry, we'd like a rematch. Garry should have said no. So Garry lost 3.5 to 2.5. And so we avoided the pencil eraser menace of 1770, and human thought survived. Did we survive the chess menace? Well, if you look at the ELO rankings today, and I think there's a learning from a human capital and talent development perspective, it's dominated at the top by cyber chess, human plus computer. So an average or reasonable chess player plus a reasonable computer system can actually outperform Kasparov at his best. And that's a key learning actually for us when we consider our path forward in AI. So if we can go to the final slide. Oh, perfect. So when I look at sort of the future of talent, the future of humanity, I do tend to see a bright future. Not a Sam Altman golden mushroom cloud bright, but more actually, sincerely bright. I think there's a lot to be hopeful about, but a lot of what we need to do is adjust. We need to evolve. We need to learn how to use the tools in a reasonable way. So if we do that, which we've always done as human beings, in my opinion, I think we'll be in good shape. But that's not the most important thing. We need to hear from the panel. So thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to the panel.
Thank you, Robert. Can you all hear me okay with the mic on both ends? You can hear me? Okay, great. Thank you for the thumbs up there. Thank you, Robert. I don't know if I'm excited, scared to death, nervous, but we're going to dig in. Let's get back to planet Earth if we can and make sure that we can walk away with some learnings that each of us can take with us. And I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Do you guys hear it? It's okay? All right, so I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves. First of all, my name is Laura Burke. I work for Barilla, the world's largest pasta company. I'm going to leave it at that because we want to spend our time learning from our panelists. So if we could, I'm going to start with you first, Carla. Please give yourself an introduction and tell us a little bit about what your company is doing with AI.
Sure. I'm Carla Grossenbacher. I'm an employment lawyer by trade, but I head Seyfarth's National Workplace Privacy team. So I advise a lot of clients on the intersection between technology and employees and AI is, of course, on everyone's minds right now. We do use AI at the firm. We have an AI portal that the lawyers can use for certain things. There's lots of rules around it. It's vetted very deeply. We've tested a lot of products, but we are using it in a judicious way, I would say.
Okay, good. We're going to learn more from Carla on some pitfalls, some legal things to keep an eye out for, maybe even some policy stuff. So we'll dig in there. Second, Jerry, KPMG, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with AI.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, Jerry Schaefer. I'm a director in our human capital advisory practice. So I focus on, it is me, isn't it? Should I turn? Okay, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
And I lead all of our go-to-market from a Gen AI perspective from a human capital perspective. So anything that touches an employee is something that I focus on. Our firm is focused in two different areas. One, we have an alliance with Microsoft where we are trying to assist in bringing Gen AI and Microsoft Copilot to market, supporting Microsoft and KPMG together. Additionally, I focus on our client components, focusing on what are the capacity opportunities where Gen AI can be inserted into the workforce, and what are those capabilities that it brings to you. What are those transformation, that word transformation, yes, is back in mainstream again. What is this transformation going to do to each of your organizations?
Great, so we have a lawyer, we have a consultant, and we have Caroline. So Caroline, tell us a little bit about what you do, Caroline.
I'm Caroline Warner, really excited to be here. I'm the Chief People Officer at Logigate, and Logigate is a SaaS company that is in the governance, risk, and compliance space, or GRC. So doing a lot around AI today. Internally, we're using it. Our engineering team uses it for coding. Our InfoSec team has built internal tools to use for things like RFPs. And then, of course, externally, since we're in this world, we just actually recently released a new solution in our platform around AI governance, which we're super excited about to help our customers.
So technology at the table in the forefront.
Yes.
So give scale and size of your firm or company, just for the people in the audience, so they can kind of get a sense for how they might fit in. So how many employees at Safeheart?
Well, we have 1,000 lawyers, so we have a lot of support staff around that, so I'd say maybe 5,000.
Okay, and KPMG worldwide?
210,000.
Okay, Caroline, for you.
Super similar, 250.
Okay, so we have giants in the room, but there's going to be some of us that are maybe just getting started, so we're going to leverage your expertise around that. Rob kind of teased us a little bit. Do we all need to start looking for new jobs? I'll go in reverse order. Caroline, for you? Do we
I
need
mean,
to?
selfishly, no, because then I'm out of a job, but maybe in the future I'll be like the chief robot officer or something like that. No, I think we have to look, I think we have to think differently about jobs, but I don't think we have to look for totally new jobs.
Okay, we're going to dig into how we can look for those
Yes,
jobs in just a little bit. What about for you, Jerry? Do we need to sharpen our pencils and erasers?
No, in our experience, what we're seeing, I think this turned back off. In our experience, what we're seeing is there is going to be a transformation. There is going to be a capacity opportunity that organizations can realize. Until you actually take the opportunity to realize the capacity is where the value is going to come in, is where we're seeing the value come in. Additionally, what we're seeing also is the capabilities that Gen AI is affording is another tool. It's another touch point for your organizations. We all received Microsoft. We all received Excel. If nobody taught you how to use pivot tables, you probably learned that on your own. ChatGPT is very similar to that. Gen AI is very similar to that. It is how are you as an organization preparing and skilling your workforce to be able to utilize the tools that give you the opportunity from an organization perspective.
And what about for you?
I don't think employees are going to be replaced by AI anytime too soon. Just even thinking about how the clients are who ask questions and the questions they have and what they're willing to do, it's not going to be a long time before employees are
Okay,
replaced.
so we're safe and secure for now. We may have to upskill. So Carolyn, that's where I want to dig in. How do we foster this collaboration between humans and machines a bit better. What are you seeing and how are you enabling that?
Yeah, and Rob, I love, first of all, I could listen to you all. I was like, we can go home, you can keep going. I heard it all. So thank you. But a lot of the things that you mentioned resonate. I think starting with, like, humans don't like change and they don't like things the way they are, right? And so I love the pencil eraser concept because while AI is obviously new and it's scary and anything new and scary is scary, the pace of change, I think, is what the big difference is, right? The pace of change, how things have moved. It's funny what you say, Carla, because I'm part of a tech group of CHROs, all different company sizes, and they did a quick poll recently, and over 60% said they were planning to hire digital workers in the next 12 months. First of all, I had to look up what that was. I'm like, before I answer the survey, what are we talking about? And it refers to jobs being fully done by AI, a bot, a tool, whatever, and zero human intervention. I mean, that's crazy to me to think about. And similarly, I've seen crazy stats like 70% of the skills required for workers to be successful in the next 4 years are going to change. I think for me, what it comes down to, which is not a new concept and something that's been part of my own leadership and hiring philosophy, is soft skills, right? Like the importance of soft skills becomes so much more critical with the pace of change. So things like being resilient, being curious, being agile, being flexible. A leader can teach someone how to code for the most part. I think it's much more difficult to teach someone how to be agile or open-minded or flexible. So I think honing in and focusing on the soft skills part is going to be more critical than ever.
And Dre, you work with a lot of clients and the workforce is shifting. What are you seeing in terms of how workforces are restructuring?
I think a lot of organizations right now, of what we're seeing, are beginning the process of understanding the angst that employees have. And they're spending a great deal of time, those that have been successful, are spending a great deal of time in change impacts, change management, learning and adoption, giving those individuals the skills in order to utilize the new tools and the capabilities that this affords you. It's about being a little bit more efficient in what you're doing, but being comfortable with saying, I understand that this is different, but you have the skills and capabilities of doing that, and we're here to support you with. It could be a learning academy, it could be change agents. We're seeing organizations who are moving more that this is a change lever, not really a major transformation. It's just doing something different.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us use it in our everyday life. We don't even realize we use it. I did it on the way here. I was talk to text and text to talk. So, we use it. We just don't even realize we're using it in our everyday life. So I think just understanding what's behind it is really, really important. You talked about fear a little bit. Carla, a lot of employers are afraid. They're like, what do we do here in terms of the liability around using AI in our work? And what are you advising clients?
Well, I'd say the most common question I get from clients about AI is, what is everybody else doing? They don't want to be left behind. But we come at it from a compliance perspective, and they're looking to us to guide them in that. And when we're talking about using artificial intelligence in recruiting, there's two big buckets of compliance, which is comply with the laws, which are coming online slowly, that specifically regulate the use of AI, and you see that in Maryland, Illinois, now Colorado, New York City, and also being mindful of the impact discrimination-wise, and looking at things like the EEOC has their technical assistance document on this, and how are we going to use AI without discriminating against anyone.
Yeah, and we have a lot of talent acquisition folks in the room, so they're probably curious if they're not already using it. How do we make sure that the risk of those algorithms that are being used behind don't have bias or discrimination in there? I think Robert mentioned in his keynote, we work so hard to try to get bias out of interviews and selection. So Caroline, for you, how are you guys kind of mitigating this risk in your technology to make sure that all the progress we made isn't undone?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little bit of a controversial take on this. I think it's interesting, not surprising, that a lot of the focus has been on bias and discrimination and concern around AI and technology and using it for talent decisions. But I also kind of say, like, all humans are biased. I mean, maybe this group is probably better because generally everyone in here is in some form of human capital role where we are probably been trained, coach, and or doing that for our clients and employees and customers. But humans have tons of bias. We all bring our bias even when we try not to. So I almost think is the magic in, and you mentioned this, Rob, again, we didn't coordinate, but I swear, similar talk track. Maybe the magic is in like using both, right? Like pairing a human, this also goes back to our jobs not going away, with AI. I think the other super important piece is understanding what you're using it for. Like whether you know it or not, Laura, you mentioned this, using it on the way down. Like all of us are using it for sure, personally, professionally. Even in like tech stacks that you're already using, probably those companies have put AI in and we don't even know. And so I think the first super important piece is like, what are you using it for? Have that understanding. And then for that thing you're using it for, like what's the level of risk? Like, am I using it to count widgets and like nothing bad is gonna happen if it gets it wrong? Or am I using it to like pick who's gonna get hired or fired? Like that's probably super risky and has a lot of problems to it. So I think the big piece is like understanding what you're using it for and then putting most of your energy on the higher risk pieces.
So we talked a little bit about the impact of HR. I think we could spend the whole time there, but I want to talk a little bit about the future to kind of continue to inspire people, or if they're just getting started, to know where to start. Jerry, I want to kind of double click on you on a couple of these questions because I know you're working with a lot of clients. But how can organizations navigate the transition of weaving in AI into job functions? So what would you suggest? Very practical.
The starting point, and it goes back to a little bit about what you were just talking about, is establishing a governance. What is your governance going to be around? What is your strategy? What is your vision? What are you using, or what do you want to use Gen AI for? Once you have that governance, you can then move into those components of what are the appropriate tools for our organization. There are different types of capability opportunities that Gen AI affords. When you look down to the individual role level, when you think of those knowledge workers, the individuals who are in the back office, that's where the greatest capacity gains that organizations are seeing, where Gen AI can be inserted in to look at those mass amounts of information and provide you a summary. But in your governance, you also have to make sure that you retain the human in the loop. These tools, the doctor will support me here, hallucinate. They will. There was an example up there about Lincoln playing the guitar. They hallucinate. They will give you incorrect information. So you have to be diligent as an organization and have a governance model in place that ensures that human is still there. So that goes back to your very first question. Are humans going away? Not anytime soon.
When we think about upskilling, where should people start? If they're just coming today and they're like, we don't even know what we want in our governance document, Jerry, where should they start?
A lot of organizations are exactly in the same place. They are exploring. How many of you have begun the journey with Gen AI in your organization?
Can I raise it?
Oh.
Yeah, you can raise your hand. Okay, fantastic. How many of you are just beginning the process of thinking about it? And how many haven't even started? So there are varying degrees of where organizations' entry points are. A lot of the organizations we're seeing fall into all three of those categories. We have one that is very advanced, who is actually embedding it in every single piece of cognitive logic that they have in their organization. It scans emails, it provides recommendations and suggestions, you can summarize emails, you can summarize tons of content. It's all connected, but the human is still there. We have organizations who are saying, where do we even start? You start with understanding your individual organization, understanding the data of your organization. HR people, you should know your data. Where are the opportunities where Gen AI can be inserted in? Those are capacity opportunities that you have to look past the role and you have to get down to individual use cases. because an individual use case can be supported across multiple individuals. Summarization of data, reporting and summarizing reports. You have to get to the point where you're having leadership conversations with each of your executives about the opportunity and the use cases for your individual roles in your organization. That's what we're seeing.
Perfect. Caroline, you have a lot of employees. I want to put the global context on the table if I can. Talk about it a little bit at home versus around the world. What are maybe some differences or considerations for folks to think through?
Yeah, I think too, also wearing the hat of, we have a lot of global customers, and I came from big global companies. I think the biggest thing is, first of all, data privacy, no matter where you are, but certainly when you're thinking about like the EU and other places, like data privacy becomes even more, I don't know what the technical term is, a mess with AI and complex. And again, this is all about, like, common theme is understanding, like, what are you using, what are you putting into it, what are you taking out of it? Because while the laws and regulations are still coming, as Carla was mentioning, and just are behind the advancements of AI, that I'm gonna guess they're gonna be heavy-handed and super aggressive around like data privacy and things like that, and where are you using it? Although we're seeing it in the States too, the Colorado example, and that's just like one of many. And I think that's going to get super complicated and complex to keep track of, but definitely something you have to keep in mind when you're thinking globally, because the rules and regs are totally different.
Perfect. Let's put Carla on the hot seat, talking about this legal and ethical point. Carla, I have a couple of questions for you, because I think organizations are doing everything they can to protect privacy and data, as Caroline just mentioned, but yet that's where the power comes, is in the analytics and helping improve decision making. So how do we kind of balance those two sides of the coin?
Yeah, when you're thinking about any kind of data privacy issue, the answer and resolution of it, generally speaking, is through disclosure and consent. And you see that in the very few laws we have on AI in recruiting. It requires people to disclose certain things. It requires people to get consent to certain things. So I think when you're thinking about using AI and data privacy implications, you need to understand the AI you're using and be able to make the appropriate disclosures. Because anytime technology interacts with an individual, it's taking something from them, right? Whether it's the data that they're giving, it's what their device has on it. It could be biometrics, it could be something like that. And while it sounds simple to understand the tech and know what it's taking, you could have a conversation, I have them often with employers, about biometrics. So there are laws about facial recognition and video interviewing. And I say, well, are you collecting and storing the biometrics? They have no idea. They just bought this shiny tool and are using it. And it matters for legal compliance and data privacy and making the right disclosures about who has your data and what exactly they're collecting. So I think about it that way. Disclosure and consent are key.
And what if an employee doesn't want to consent?
That's a question I get all the time, and the answer, generally speaking, is in the private employment context, just like you need to abide by my dress code, you need to use the technology I have or go work somewhere else. I mean, that's, for example, embedded into the Illinois Biometric Privacy Act, one of the most draconian laws out there, but it says specifically you can require consent to biometrics as a condition of employment, and that's a generally well-accepted principle.
So any laws that are coming forward relative to talent systems? Lots of people in here are working with integrated payroll systems, talent management systems. When you work across platforms, any tips to help us think through connecting those technologies and making sure that we're protecting upstream and downstream, especially when you have multiple systems involved?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know any, the Colorado law is very broad-based, right?
Maybe you could give a quick commercial of what that is.
Sure. The Colorado law deals with high-risk AI systems, which it describes as any kind of AI system that can make a material decision about, we'll focus on employment here, but a few other things as well. And it requires disclosures, impact assessments, notifications if something negative happens to someone out of using the AI. And so that's not just about, the current laws in New York City, Illinois, and Maryland. they have a very small slice of the pie. Illinois and Maryland are facial recognition in video interviews, and New York City is automated employment decision tools, which has its own definition. So Colorado is broad-based, and you need to comply with that throughout all those systems you mentioned.
Perfect. I want to go back to Caroline for a second. When we did our pre-call, you talked about policies and procedures, and Jerry was really talking about governance. And I asked the question if you'd be willing to share kind of a sample or a template of policies and procedures for folks who may not have one in action. You've had yours in place for quite a while. Maybe you could share just a little bit, some lessons around some of your policies and procedures and how they've helped, or maybe potholes you stepped in and you got out of real quick.
Yeah, perfect. As we're talking, I'm thinking I want to go back to paper and pencil days. That seems like so much simpler. I give up. But no, I think a couple things. First of all, a lot of what Jerry was saying about put a framework in place, like start somewhere. I mean, with some of the stuff, it's like so complex in other ways. Like I'm all about trying to keep it simple. I know that's like really difficult to think about with this stuff, but putting a framework in place, again, it's understanding what are you using it for, what do you have, and I'm going to guess, although the legal stuff isn't quite here yet, it's not going to be okay to be like, well, I don't know, like we use whatever, Lattice, I didn't know they were using AI, that's on them. Like I'm going to guess that's not going to work, right? So it's also understanding of the tools that you're already using. And then I'm going to go back to my risk thing. Like you gotta, when you understand what you're using it for, are these tasks like repetitive or nuanced? Are they the volume? Is this something you're doing twice a year or 100 times a day? And then what is the risk of what you're using it for? And I think you got to put guidelines in place around that so the level of guideline matches the level of risk. Something we can help you with at LogicGate. I mean, I'm not on commission, but of course I have to plug. But truly, I think it's about like starting somewhere and putting things in place that are going to be relevant to that risk level and start there. And just start somewhere. You can always iterate on it. But I think the key is getting something in place. You don't want to have something happen and then it's, oh, we don't have anything. Like that's not a good place to be. And yes, I'm happy to share samples on that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Listen, we've got a lot of questions that are coming in. So Megan, if you're okay, I'm going to go ahead and take some of these live questions because they're better than mine, to be honest with you. So we're gonna take them. Jerry, this question's for you. KPMG is working with Microsoft on Copilot. Maybe you could talk a little bit about Copilot. But the question is, what is the most common drawback organizations are adopting relative to AI-based resources? Any thoughts on that?
Sure. So Copilot is Microsoft's embedded tool, Gen AI, in the Microsoft suite of products. They have, I think, 7 or so different types of Gen AI, but Copilot is specific to your Microsoft 365 suite. So it's embedded into Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams. So it's their native Gen AI there. And the second part of the question was what? I'm sorry, I missed that already.
That's okay. Hold on, let me go back to this because I had moved to my next question. So the question is, what are some drawbacks that organizations are seeing around, kind of code testing or
Right.
Copilot, if you will?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we're seeing is every organization and every software is building some type of Gen AI. So you have 10 different softwares out there, you might have 10 different Gen AIs. You have to, in your governance, and that's why the focus around having a framework. What are you using it for? What is the tool that's going to support that? Are you going to, as an organization, support the technical debt of 10 Gen AIs? I can tell you, licensing is pretty expensive for those because every organization is going to charge you an additional licensing fee for their software, for that portion of it, at least what we're seeing so far in the software we're working with. So you have to make a strategic business decision. What are those opportunities for the roles? What are the tools that are going to support that? And what is your overall technical philosophy to support your governance?
One of the other questions that came through was, there are some real positions that are in danger of being eliminated. So maybe if anyone could share on the panel, what are you seeing that is replacing jobs and how can we upskill to just redeploy those resources?
There you go. Oh.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering if my
You
team.
can start.
I wonder if my team put this question into testing. I think starting, again, back to when you think about how to deploy them, like starting with the more obvious things, like I'm sure you all have seen a lot around like administrative type tasks, process type tasks, scheduling, right, responding to emails, although I still can't really wrap my head around that. But so I think I would say those types of roles may be more at risk. And then again, back to the roles that require more nuance, which could be lots of roles in HR, I think are going to be way harder to replace. I was also thinking about it, not specific to LogicGate or my world, but from a like traditionally white collar versus blue collar jobs. Sometimes I'm making generalizations, caveat, disclaimer. But you know, in the past when changes have happened, like moving from pencils and all that, it's impacted sort of the more blue collar jobs in a more significant way, or the introduction of the internet. Not everyone has access. I almost wonder if this is almost in the reverse, because at least for now, although I did have this conversation with my brother, he's like, no, you're gonna have a robot plumber. I'm like, what? But work with me. For right now, perhaps those jobs are actually become more at a premium. I think they're harder, at least in obvious ways, to replace fully. Maybe we'll have like a smart toilet that doesn't ever break, I don't know. But at least for now, maybe less at risk.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think what we've seen across our client base is the knowledge worker role has the greatest capacity for Gen AI automation and augmentation. That means areas in finance seem to come to the top. Sorry, areas in HR seem to always come to the top of our surveys with our clients as having some of the greatest opportunities.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's talk about testing and learning. So Carla, how do you feel about, from a compliance perspective, kind of dabbling, testing and learning before things go into live production? Or
I think it's a good idea. That's the way, from a data privacy standpoint, you can see what it's taking from individuals or devices. You know, a lot of the laws are leaning toward requiring audits or impact assessments, and that's your time to do that as well, I think. And you can also test and try to get around the bias issue as well, you know, test drive it that way. I think it's really important.
okay, helps in litigation, defending anything?
Well, right now there aren't any
Disclaimer.
there aren't any laws with sort of private right of actions where you'd have like a good faith defense, but you could see that coming one day.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about preparing our whole workforces. Anything organization-wide that you're seeing or doing to kind of lift the whole? This was another question from the audience.
I mean, I'm going to double down on my soft skills versus hard skills. No matter what happens in the world, I believe that those things never change, and people will become even more competitive and stand out of the crowd from a performance perspective if they can be resilient and curious and learn and agile and flexible. I mean, you take AI out of the picture. Think of the last like 5 years where every single thing from COVID on to politics to whatever got tossed in the air, and like I think the people that thrived in the workplace, at least with all the change, which certainly wasn't easy, were folks that could kind of like roll with it. So I think that's something that applies like regardless of what your day-to-day job is, that you could help with your organization, again, regardless of what role they're in.
What we're seeing with organizations is be transparent, communicate frequently and often. What is the organization doing? How is this going to help, or what are the efficiencies? What are you seeing? Don't keep it hidden in the governance. Make sure your organizations are prepared. KPMG, as I mentioned, has an alliance with Microsoft, $2 billion alliance between the two organizations. Every single employee in KPMG got Copilot. And it was about being transparent. We want you to use it. We want you to ingrain it in your work. Try. It's about putting it in the flow of work. I'll go back to my Excel example. If nobody ever told you, if you were a finance person who started out with pencil and paper, you're an accountant, great accountants, they moved to Excel. Just a different tool. Rather than writing in Ledger, they wrote into an Excel spreadsheet. I remember when I first did spreadsheets, I used to highlight the spreadsheet in different colors so I knew these added to one total, these added to another total. Then I found what were called pivot tables. So it's about taking advantage of using the tool for different opportunities, different ways of looking at it. It's helping each other learn new ways of working, getting it ingrained into the flow of work.
I think that's the big challenge. Is I have it on mine, and sometimes it pops up and it says, "Do you want Copilot to help you?" And I'm like, "I do, but I don't know what that means. So no, let me go, let me go do the work myself." And you're right. If you don't like try it in the middle of it, then you're just like, "Let me just do it the long way. It's faster." So I think we have to try ourselves.
Exactly, and there was a question in our pre-read about the coming classes of new hires that you'll be bringing in. They're better at Copilot, or they're better at AI than I am. They're like, Gen AI, oh, that's just a new term for me being able to have people type for me, and I talk into my phone, and it just gives me suggestions. They've been using it their entire life. I've just been using it since it came out.
Another question came in, and anyone on the panel can take this. I think this is interesting that after we, partner humans and AI together, how should we deprioritize things to free up capital? Any tips on how to kind of use it to help us figure out where we've created the capacity that we can reallocate?
I mean, I'm still thinking about that. I highlight my cells still in Google Sheets. I'm like, what's a pivot table? I gotta look. I'm kidding. I hire people.
I'll teach you.
I hire people to do that for me. I think again, it's a combination of all the things that we talked about, right? In pairing the two things together, I would start with from a process improvement and efficiencies, like the low risk tasks that are more repetitive. Again, risk is obviously the theme of the day, but things that are lower risk. And then I like what you're saying, Laura, in that question, because I think it could actually, on the positive, free up folks to do other things, right? And that's something we're always talking about. And I find the generations coming are very much pushing for I want to do different things. I got promoted 5 minutes ago. I'm ready for my next job. So I think that could offer the double piece of that is offering an opportunity actually for people to explore that, come up with ideas, and take a stab at something new.
How are we seeing it work in with teamwork, with teams? Because I feel like a lot of what we've talked about are kind of individual tasks or reports or different activities, but when you pull a group of teams together, how have you seen that play out?
You're all turning to me
From the clients that we're talking with, they're seeing more collaboration zones. So they'll give Gen AI to a group of individuals from a pilot perspective. And they create these zones, these learning teams to learn off of one another. How did you, Mary Sue, ingrain that in your flow of work? Oh, Bob, how about yourself? What did you do? And it's these learning teams that are supporting one another, because every single one of them have a concern. They have a concern just like all of us have a concern, am I going to be here tomorrow? But if you put them together and say, we want you to try putting it in your flow of work. What works? What didn't work? As I mentioned earlier, they hallucinate. All of them were like, yeah, it hallucinated for me. How did you get over that? Oh, well, I just wrote some more command and it gave me these results. And oh, by the way, here's a great command to use. And so it's about sharing. It's about helping each other ingrain it in the flow of work.
What about with lawyers?
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't think, but we do exactly that. So I was part of a working group that test drove a bunch of these automated things. Like you could say, tell me what are the laws that govern artificial intelligence in the United States. And 2 seconds later, you would have this memo. And we would talk about well, what prompt did you put in? Because I got something else. And what prompt did you put in? But the general feedback was it was like having a not very good associate do a memo for you. So we're not going to be replaced by that technology anytime soon.
Instead of AI, it's inferior associate.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Perfect.
Got it.
Jerry, this question specifically for you. The question came in about how are you exploring AI for human capital with clients that you're working with? If you have any examples that when somebody comes to you and says, we need help, how are you digging in with them to do the assessment?
Sure. So KPMG put a great deal of investment in what is called a business value assessment, or a BVA for short. Of course, we have to have our acronyms. And what we do is we work with clients around anonymized data, anonymized information that they provide to the firm. We have algorithms and LLM. We look at the World Economic Forum. We look at ONET, so standardization of your population. And then we have from World Economic Forum, what is the percent of capacity gain that is available to organizations and available to role-specific decomposition. We can then take that and we can, and what we're seeing in these readouts is the capacity opportunity. We talk about opportunity. We don't talk about impact or what's it going to do, and we're not taking roles out. But it gives you a direction in nature where you as an organization have the greatest capacity.
Perfect. I'm going to come back to some of my questions here. I'm going to kind of give a last warning. If you want to get a question specific to the panelists, send it in text 22333. Megan's helping me there. But I want to ask, what are you guys reading? What podcasts are you listening to? What are you doing to get your skills kind of sharp? How are you staying fresh? So I'd like to hear from all the panelists. What are you reading? What are you listening to?
Well, I'll start. There is a podcast called Pioneers and Pathfinders. And it's a podcast that's moderated or hosted by the former chair of our firm. And he's not a lawyer anymore, but he does AI consulting basically to do all the AI for the firm. And he has the most fascinating guests on because it's mostly about AI. So he talks to tech people. If you want to take a deep dive into the tech, there's episodes for that. He talks to a lot of HR people about what they're doing with AI. So it's great. I would say check it out.
Okay, great. Say it one more time in case they were writing it down.
Pioneers and Pathfinders.
Pioneers and Pathfinders. Thank you. Jerry, what are you reading or what podcast? Well, we'll skip over to Caroline.
We're mixing it up.
Ladies first. Ladies first. Thank you.
I love podcasts. Mine's a little different. So Acquired is my current jam. It takes a story of a company from idea to current state, and they're long, but you can get a lot of walks. I blow dry my hair in the morning with my podcast on. Whatever you gotta do, multitask. Speaking of efficiencies, I don't need AI. And it tells the story of the journey. We're talking like huge companies. So interesting, like Visa, Starbucks. I was just listening to one on like Hermes. And what I think is cool about it as it relates to what we're talking about is all about change, right? Think of some of these companies that have been in place for, I think Visa's like 50 years or something, and how much has changed, and they're still top in their field. And I think you can learn so much from a story and a journey of like, what were the pitfalls, what decisions did they make, what, as we often say at Logigate, company building is hard. And so it's easy to look at a brand and be like, if only we were like, whatever, Nike. Well, they've also been on a journey. So Acquired is the name of the one.
Use cases are fun, and it does help the storytelling and also makes the business case internally. So we might come back to budgets. We might touch on that. So, okay, Jerry, what are you reading? What's your podcast of choice?
So a lot of what I'm doing is going out to the various different softwares that are releasing Gen AI in their own specific instance to understand what are their use cases. Getting back to the whole, what are they doing? What are the work activities? What can they augment? Because in my role, I have to know what all of them are doing. I can't just focus on one specific area because our clients expect that I know a lot about a lot of different things. And each of the softwares have different use cases, have different capabilities. So you go out to their websites, they have free training classes that you can take out there. They have tons of white papers, tons of different memos and documentation on what their AI is doing. You have to, as we were talking about Gen AI, when you look at your governance structure, what is the AI that's going to work for you? And there's not just one that's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, that's good. One of the questions came through about trust. So I kind of want to pivot to trust. And I think we have a couple Edelman folks in the room. I don't think it came from an Edelman person, but they do reference the Edelman Trust Barometer, which I know they're also members, so I'll put a plug in for them, for you guys. So somebody mentioned this year's Edelman's Trust Barometer talks about innovation being low, and innovation, is what is at stake. Mm-hmm. Is there any connection with innovation being low and trust? I'd like your perspective on that as we start to wrap up.
I mean, I don't know if this, something that I think about is like, are we not going to have brains anymore? Like part of the price of entry, or what differentiated, or I guess it's still current, differentiates people is like your experiences, and storytelling, and when I failed and when I succeeded. And now it's like, well, you can just put it in a bot and find it out anyway. So I think that gets a little bit of trust, because I'm like, did you actually do that or know that or experience it? Or did you just look it up? Which, okay, cool. Maybe someone would say, yeah, but isn't that great? Efficiencies. Like, I guess, I worry it takes some of the uniqueness away of like people and experiences and what makes the world go around in some ways. So.
And sometimes I get the bot and I'm like, agent, because, you can
Zero,
tell.
zero,
yeah,
zero.
you can tell they're
Yeah.
just not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets more frustrating than what it might be efficient in there. So what about trust for you, Carla? I mean, how are you thinking about that and innovation?
So you said innovation was low and trust was low,
Yeah.
was the result of the survey?
I think the question was, innovation was not forthcoming, and the question was, is it because trust is in question or trust is in doubt relative to innovation around AI?
Well, it could be, right? I mean, people are disinclined to change. Why spend a lot of money and infrastructure around change if people aren't going to trust it? I think as a lawyer, there's the second level of trust of, am I going to invest all this money in an AI platform and then someone's going to pass a law and I'm just going to have to throw it out the window because I can't really use it?
Yeah.
Well, and that's what we're seeing is a lot of organizations are saying, what is the value? What is the value to my organization? As I mentioned, the license fee is very expensive. And organizations who are trying it saying, oh, okay, it's like going to Google. I type something in Google and it gives me an answer. What value does that give to me, to my organization? So a part of the trust is recognizing, one, the value, but you have to have trust, validation, verification of your models inserted in. So maybe there's a blend of, I don't trust the results, I don't trust that I'm going to get the value, so maybe that's why the technology component and trust was in the survey. I'd be interested in seeing, if whoever asked that question, I'd be interested in seeing that survey. Because there is a major difference between the opportunity capacity and achieving a value ROI for your investment.
Perfect.
Two different things.
And I think transparency goes a long way too, even if it's not perfect, to just say that it's not perfect, and we're iterating, as Caroline mentioned. So I have my last question. I'm getting my 5-minute notice here, so my last question before we wrap up. What is your biggest concern? I'll let all the panelists answer that question about their biggest concern.
How much time do we have? No. Now that's a panel I want to be on, which is like the dark side of AI. That's where my...
Maybe round 2, Caroline.
Yeah, I like
Yes.
this. We can come back
Round
part
two.
2. I never thought I'd say I'd have something in common with Elon Musk, but maybe it is the dark side of AI. I mean, truly, genuinely, like lots of positives, so interesting, yay, but AI in the wrong hands terrifies me. Like, it's already happening when you think of all sorts of things, scams, and I'd like to believe in the positive in most things, but the reality is there's lots of bad people that do bad things, and that absolutely terrifies me.
Well, I would agree with that, but from a legal perspective, I wouldn't say, I mean, my concern when I do my job is people come and say, what do we need to do to comply? And I can tell you today, but next week it might be different. It's sort of a moving target. And again, this notion of setting something up that may not work because we don't know what the federal government's going to do. We don't know what some of the big states that everybody, or at least our national clients, are going to do.
Yeah, a fast-moving target too at that. So, Jerry, I'll give you the last fear as we close out.
Professionally, I'll agree with you. The pace of change, 4.0 is out. It was 1.0 in January. So the pace of these LLMs, Gen AI, is happening so fast. We're changing our point of view and thought processes like on a weekly basis. Like I'll go back to my phone, look at my Copilot, and we'll say, hey, there's some new updates for you. Personally, I agree. In the wrong hands, there can be some nefarious things that can happen, and what happens is it just happens faster. So
Yeah,
that's my biggest concern.
I'm going to invite my colleague Lucinda Eland up. She's going to close this out today. She runs our leadership learning and development. But before I do, I want to thank Jerry, Carla, and Caroline for being on the panel. I learned so much from you all. I hope you guys learned a lot. So thank you so much.
Yep. Okay. Thank you all so much for being here today. And thank you to our incredible speakers for that informative conversation. I know for me, I learned a lot personally. My name is Lucinda Eland, and I am the microphone is jumping at me. It's AI. I am the Learning and Development Manager at Barilla America, Inc. And we at Barilla are very proud to sponsor this important program along with UL Solutions. I'd like to thank our speakers again for such a great conversation and for sharing your expertise with us. A few takeaways for me that stood out. Carolyn, you mentioned that 70% of skills needed over the next 4 years are going to change in importance. So really just thinking about upskilling our workforce, especially in the area of soft skills, is important. Carla, you mentioned a couple times, which I thought was great. You had confidence that it's going to be a while before we are replaced by AI, so I was very happy to hear that personally. And then Jerry, you talked a lot about governance and making sure that we're keeping the human in the loop. So those were things that stood out to me. Also a couple of takeaways if you guys didn't have a chance to write it down. The podcasts, a couple of them that were mentioned, were Pioneers and Pathfinders. And another podcast was Acquired. So if you guys need to upskill some of your own education, those are a few podcasts you can check out. If you're interested in attending future Executive Club Chicago events, you can please visit their website for more information. And thank you guys again for attending today's program. And now we'd like to invite you to continue the conversation with us at the reception area out in the terrace.